Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers. This is Annie235, and this is Module 9. Welcome to Texturing the Character, Clothing, and Assets. We've been waiting for this now. We've got a blank slate as far as the model goes and the texture, or the clothing goes, and the assets. So we're going to be working on Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 is going to be the upper body clothing and assets and hair and all, and the skin. And then part 2 will be the lower body. So you guys can feel free to go ahead and texture everything and get as far as you can this week, and then you'll have a nice week to relax next week because you'll have most of it done. Just remember that when you give me the renders, I want them from the waist up. Okay, really focus on that. And you guys know all my information, and you know I'm going to place the introduction video here. It's hard to believe that we're on Module 9, 9th week, week 9. Crazy. So, we're going to want to make sure we go through the overview so you understand what's going on. So, the modeling is completely finished. It's hard to believe. Everything is done now as far as modeling goes. Now we're going to bring our character to life by texturing. So I've given you 2 weeks. You really only needed probably 1 week to do this, but I really wanted you guys to just kind of experiment, and this will be a busy week as far as texturing goes, because I really want you guys to go as far as you can with details and adding like stitching to your clothing and all that stuff. And just go that extra mile and see how far you can go with it. But in Module 9 Part 1, I'm going to show you how to prep your stylistic character geometry for exporting. And you guys are going to create an AI standard surface material for the entire character, UDIM UV tiles. So I'm going to show you how to go ahead and lay out UDIM tiles. Maybe you know how to do this already, and that's fantastic. But you can also use standard conventional UV mapping as well. You have that choice, and you can mix and match, meaning that this is for film. So you can, I want you to keep everything separate, even down to the buttons and hats and other assets that you have. Keep them all separated, and you don't need to combine them as one object. In fact, I'd rather you didn't. And each one of your objects can have a 4096 by 4096 map as you know, as high as you want. We're not going to 8K yet, but we're going to do 4K. So 4096 by 4096 is probably the highest I want you to go, and you can do that for every object that you have. What I would suggest that you do, though, is that you make sure your textile density is even throughout all of your assets. So you may want to go ahead and lay out your assets and make sure your textile density is correct over the entire the entire clothing and character and everything. So that's really important to me, and it's important to the industry that your textile density is the same throughout the whole thing. So you shouldn't have a higher resolution texture on your clothing than your face, because that's going to look weird. So make sure your textile density is good throughout. How do you do that? Well, you can map everything separate, but what I would do is map the largest part of your object. So if it's the coat or jacket, then you will lay out the UVs for that first, and then you'll go into textile density and go and click on Get, G-E-T, Get, and that will give you what you have for that the biggest piece. And so from there you will write down that number, and then you'll start selecting these objects and making sure that you click on Set. So you get the textile density on the biggest object, and then you set the rest of everything for your character. Alright, and that's how you can do that and keep it the same. And then what you want to do is select everything and then put the checkerboard on there, so you can kind of check the whole body, look at it in perspective mode, and then check it out and make sure all the squares are all about the same size. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing when I check your work, and we're going to need all the raw maps, so the raw UVs. So make sure that I have those. Now I won't need them in this one, but I'll be checking them in Module 8, the last module you guys did. And that's coming up on Sunday, this coming Sunday. So anyway, so I'm going to show you Udemy Tile. I'm not going to do anything else. I pretty much, assuming that you guys know how to UV map things and lay things out. But I'm going to show you how to do Udemy Tile and show you how to then take those Udemy tiles and go into Substance Painter and get them all set up. And this is basically texturing, and you should have everything UV mapped, but I'm just going to take you through. Now with this one though, I don't really cover the Udemy tiles. I mean, as far as texturing goes, I usually just do standard conventional UVs. Okay, but this one is basically we're going to be using Substance Painter or Photoshop to create your textures, and I do a lot of different things myself when I'm texturing. Okay. Alright, so you're going to prep your character, you're going to get everything set up with an AI standard surface material, you're going to use your Udemy tiles that you've created, or however you decided to texture or UV map your character. And then I've got a course example. I'm going to be changing this probably. You'll probably see something different by Monday. I'm not really super happy with that, so I'm going to do something else. And then we've got the same old, and then we've got texturing. Basically, my lecture goes over texturing details and basically just kind of explaining that your model just is a model without textures. Even if it looks like an amazing model, it just doesn't come to life until you add textures. And I think you'll agree. And you guys can look these guys up. Diego Rodriguez is a fantastic artist who's got this looks photorealistic, looks really good. Also Hellblade, this is fan art, believe it or not. It's not from the game. And you guys can look at that. This is artwork from Anton Krasko. So this is awesome. These guys are both, I think they're featured in ArtStation, so you can check them out there. Anyway, so we talk about where can you find Substance Painter textures. You can get them Substance Share. That's a lot of, this is the freebie spot. Substance Source has some really nice procedural textures in here, great base textures. And of course you can go to ArtStation and check things out there. I don't think they have any freebie stuff there, but then Quixel is giving all their stuff out to students, which is great. It's awesome. These are very high-res models. They're scanned models that they scan. I mean, they're photorealistic because they're real. I mean, they're scanned from real objects. And then Substance Painter. Again, if you haven't used Substance Painter, I don't think anybody hasn't in this class, but if you haven't, it is an incredible product, software that you should be using. And if you haven't used Substance Painter, you need to watch this introductory video. And if you haven't seen this video, even though you guys may know a lot about Substance Painter, watch this video. It's about an hour long, and they cover pretty much everything. Intro. It's a great intro. Very good. Good to the point where some of the stuff they're talking about is some advanced features to Substance Painter. So watch that one. It's great. And then I got a video for you for adding stitching. So I need, and I think you guys are going to want to experiment with that and have some fun with it. You have time this week. You're only doing the upper body So you have time to experiment and really go out there and research and learn as much as you can about adding details. Again, like my lecture is about, it's all in the details. Here's some more videos, and here's another video on how to add details, hard surface details, directly on your polygon. And this can be used for your assets too as well, not just your character and clothing. You can use it on, like, if you create a sword or something like that, you can add some really cool hard surface detail that would be impossible otherwise. Not all of us can afford ZBrush. I have it, but it took me like 3 or 4 years to save enough money to get it, and it's expensive. Using normal maps and anchor points is a really good one. They've got some. This is a great tutorial. And here's another tutorial on generators, filters, and mask editor. And here's one about detailing fabrics in Substance Painter. So got some great videos for you guys to watch, just to kind of get yourself prepped up for this week's texturing. I can go back to hair cards again because some of you need some help with that. So I've got some hair textures here. I also got some textures later. I kept this in here because I think it's important for you guys to see that again. Okay. 3-point lighting is really, especially when you start getting your characters textured, that you have some good lighting techniques. So I want you to start using the fill, key, and backlight. So your key light will have, maybe you'll do it at 0.8. You're going to put an Arnold dome in here, but your key light will be like 0.8 intensity and exposure intensity the same. And then your fill light is about half of your key light. So if your key light is 0.8, and then your fill light would be 0.4, and then your backlight, I would put to half of that to 0.2 exposure and intensity. So that's your 3-point light, and then you want to make sure your key light has shadows on, and then your fill and your backlight do not have shadows on. Okay, and you can tweak it out from there. That's just a good start. And I'm sure you've seen these videos before. I've had them in there before. And the assignment, basically in a nutshell, you're going to be texturing your character. And yeah, it's time to add textures. So I do a very quick job of how I lay out my texture, my UVs. I know that we're kind of going backwards, but some of you may have not laid out your UVs properly, and you're wondering why they don't match up. And so I take you through how to match and optimize your UDIM tiles, or your UV space the best you can, and show you how to cut in certain areas of your model so you can add a seam, what they call a natural seam, where things are sewn anyway, right? So that would be around the arms, and then around the armpit, right under the armpit. Okay. In the back, we don't want a seam in the back because we've got these natural spots where it breaks up, and there's this, and you're going to want to put sewing or stitching in those areas too. You're going to want to put stitching around the collar, or stitching around. Look at your shirts, look at your clothing, and make sure you make them look as realistic as possible. Texturing your hair has been kind of a problem. You're going to have to unitize your maps so they're straight. So that's really important. It's not hard to do that. There's kind of a trick to it. So I'm going to put a video in here. And if you guys have any issues, just let me know. I'll be happy to help you. And then skin texturing is another tough area because we don't want it to look photorealistic. We don't want to have real lips. We don't want to have real skin per se. We're not trying to make it look like a photorealistic human because we have a stylistic character. That would look kind of weird. So I've got a nice skin texturing lecture set up for you guys, and I found this tiling texture of the skin on GameTextures.com, and they got, yeah, you have to pay per month, but I think it's well worth it. I've subscribed to it. Again, I'm not asking you guys to do any of that stuff. You don't have to subscribe to anything. Here's a tutorial on subsurface scattering. Okay. And this is directly from the website, so you can check here if there's something missing in here or something doesn't look right or you're missing text. Just click on this or just copy this and put that in your favorite search engine and it should come up. And one of the things you want to make sure is that your normals are facing the right way. So that's number one. Also, your character has to be scaled properly. You have to scale it in feet. Without those two things, your subsurface scattering will not work. Right? So it goes through weight, color, and then radius. They talk about. I also use another texture in subsurface scattering for the dermis. There's epidural and dermis, the lower area where you see your tissue and blood and all that stuff. So your skin is basically white. It's whiter than you think, and the reason why it looks dark, your skin color, is white. Okay, and then that's the tissue underneath in the blood that gives you that warm pinkish hue on your skin, depending on the color of your skin. Okay. So anyway, and if you, and I'm not sure, but your skin pigment, everybody has different skin pigment, but it's that underlying tissue underneath that we got to watch for when we're creating skin and doing subsurface scattering. Okay, so I've got some I've got two videos here for you guys to watch. Make sure you watch those on different ways to do things. I tend to texture my character in Photoshop, but I go back and forth. Like I'll go and do a base texture, okay, and then I bring it into Photoshop and finish it up with really light. I paint the eyebrows and I give her makeup. And that's okay. I don't think I didn't overdo it, so I think it looks pretty natural. The problem with Substance Painter is that it is procedural maps, and you basically have to go in there and paint the irregularities of the skin. Now, they do have some great textures in here. You're going to find out that they do have some great textures you can start with. I always look at Substance Painter as a starting point, basics. I always love. I can get it to about 90-95%, and then I want to go back into Photoshop and finish it up. You should always have your textures touch Photoshop. And you should put all your renders through Photoshop too as well, color correct and highlights and shadows. You need to take care of all that stuff. I also have some videos on texturing your assets. Now, you don't necessarily have to have this asset to watch the videos. You can watch the videos. You can see how I texture the object. And I got quite a few of those. And then you're pretty much done. So you texture your clothing, you know how to do the skin, and I show you how to render the skin. I do a couple renders for you in this one. So you're good to go. Okay, and the next thing is we have the grading rubric. Make sure we go through that really quick. We're going to turn in your character modeling and texture mood boards. And yes, I know I've probably gotten these a couple times from you, but please turn them in again, because I want to see any changes that you made to the character and how close you were able to get to your drawings with your character. And you turned in an MB, FBX, and OBJ of the scene. You also turned in your texture maps, all your texture maps that you created out of Substance Painter for your stylistic character, clothing, and all the assets. And then you turn in 4 renders, waist up, front and back perspective, and a bust shot that's a little closer. Front and back, I don't need to see wireframes, so just the front and back renders of the stylistic character, body, accessories. Okay, and if you could do 2K square, you guys know how to do both HD and square, and that's worth 30 points. And then of course your rendering, lighting and rendering, make sure you do a good job lighting and rendering, make that character really pop out with your lighting. Yeah, it's worth 10 points, and everything's worth 40 points there. Turn in instructions. Not going to be much to it. In fact, I'm not going to have a video this week because I've got everything that you need to have examples right here. So we'll hit those just a second. So you turned in your MB, FBX, and OBJ file format of your scene. You turned in all your PBR texture maps, base color, metallic, roughness, and normal. For the waist up, stylistic character, clothing, and all assets. Student turned in 4 renders, front and back perspective, waist up, and front and back perspective bust. Waist up of the stylistic character, clothing, and assets. This is HD 1080. And then your folder structure, of course, is you have your main folder as your first and last name, ANI 235 module 9. You're going to create a subfolder called Scenes, and you're going to place all of your scenes in your MB, FBX, and OBJ in that folder. Source images, you're going to place all of your PBR texture maps in that folder, and then your renders, you're going to place your 4 renders in that one. Again, you know, if you give me a HD 1080 instead of a 2K square, you're not going to get penalized. I want a nice render at either resolution. The only reason why I do a 2K square is it does give you a nice portrait. Okay, and you can see here that you can't really do a 2K square because it wouldn't give you enough room, so you're gonna have to do HD 1080 on that. So the front and the back perspective, and then this would be a great example of using a 2K square for the bust, because we don't really want to see those arms. We really want to focus on the character, and so that would be a good example of using 2K square. So I'm okay with either. Okay, so don't worry if you turn in a HD 1080 on. This is what I use for both of these, or all 4 of these, is HD 1080. So, but if you give me a 2K square, I'm not going to scoff at that, as long as you do a good composition and you're good to go. Anyway, thank you so much, and I wish you the best of luck this week, and I really want you to really focus on texturing and really add those details and get inspired. And just take your time, do a good job, and again, I wish you the best of luck, and I'll see you guys next week in Module 10. Now, if you want to get ahead, feel free to go ahead and get ahead, but just make sure that you only turn in what I want as far as the renders go. Okay, I'm not looking for any wireframe. I think we're past that now, so no wireframes, and I'm just looking for, these are exactly how I want you to compose your shots and your lighting. Okay, because we see depth and we can see the shadows in all of this too as well. Okay, have a great day and have a great week, and I'll see you next time in Module 10. I'll see you then.